Hello and welcome to Inside Training, a brand new official Hibs podcast. In this series, we'll speak to key people at HTC to get a unique insight into the training, tactics and technical work done by the staff at Hibernian Football Club. And who better to start with than Jack Ross? Our head coach was kind enough to give us around an hour of his time in his office at HTC. Surrounded by tactics boards and bookshelves full of football literature, on this first episode, Jack talks us through his career journey from coaching at Dumbarton to the top job here at the Hibees. He discusses his training methods, key influences, and how he plans the week ahead of a game, and also how he picks his starting lineup. His man management, recruitment, and how he creates the right culture at a club was also on the agenda during an hour-long, fascinating chat. As I said, we were in his office, so you'll hear a couple of knocks at the door and possibly some noise from the gym just down the corridor. But I'm really excited for you to hear the gaffer on this pod. Jack, thank you for joining us, researching your career, your decisions. Looking back at previous interviews, it's obvious to see that you've had an incredibly interesting background. Some things that the Hibernian fans might not know as well. And I'm really interested to know how that's shaped you as a manager, as a person, and your time here with us at Hibernian. I mean, you've played in over 300 games as a player. You've now managed over 275 matches. But when was the first time that you decided, I want to go into management?
I think like most professional players, I was in a position where I needed to work post-playing career. And coaching and management offers a realistic pathway, albeit not an easy one to follow. However, for me, it wasn't necessarily the one that fell into or gave me the opportunity to begin with. I was working with the PFA, so although I was involved in football, I certainly was involved in coaching and management. But prior to that, I always, if I was going to be involved, I wanted to manage. I felt as if I'd captained clubs and I felt as if I had those qualities to be a manager. However, I hadn't really given much thought to coaching, and it sounds a little bit of a daft thing to say now, but even at that point there was probably a distinction between the two. However, there's been an evolution over recent times whereby much more onus on managers to be able to coach as well. And thankfully, opportunity presented itself quickly when I stopped playing to coach at Dumbarton as an assistant manager. And although I had completed my licences, my B&A licence at that time, I had never actually taken training sessions before. Now that's a little bit embarrassing for me because I would encourage all my players now to do that and to gain experience. So I didn't know whether or not it would be it was right for me, whether or not I would enjoy it, whether I'd be any good at it. What I found is I really enjoyed it. Now whether you're any good at it, I think it's for other people to judge. You can gauge from the response you get from players and the reaction you get from sessions. So it was a slow burner for me, and as I said, that idealistic pathway, I think, of being a manager took a very different journey in that respect, of becoming a coach first, and one that undoubtedly has helped me massively as a manager. If I hadn't had that coaching experience and those coaching opportunities and those coaching experiences, I don't think I would have been going on to have a career as a manager and have relative success within it, because I think it enabled me to understand a lot of the dynamics of coaching that I think underpins successful managers now as well.
When you were a player, did you ever speak to anyone about becoming a manager, having a career in coaching? Or is that something that you were very focused on yourself and you kind of knew how to get there?
I think because of my career pathway as a player, I had the stereotypical or traditional early career pathway from being affiliated with professional clubs as a schoolboy and leaving school to go full time. And everything at that point is in a smooth upward trajectory. And then I got released at the end of my apprenticeship as a full-time player. And your world comes crashing down and you have to find another way. I went back to university for 4 years, played junior football. And that experience at that point, before I returned to the senior game, probably meant that I never really had this belief that the game owed me anything. I felt as if I had to earn opportunities. And I think that had quite a profound effect on me then. I didn't really look at anybody within the game and think I want to be like you. I didn't rely on anybody within the game. And when I was getting towards the end of my playing career, I backed myself to work. and doing whatever, because you've got to do that to provide. At that time, of course, when you get older, you have responsibilities like family, etc. So I think that early career experience of being rejected was sore, taught me a lot, and I think shaped a lot of my future behaviours. But then what I would say is that probably family influence. So my dad started his own business when I was a teenager, and I watched him build a business from scratch, and I was fascinated by how he did that. And I was quite nosy as a kid and asked lots of questions, and was close to my dad. And there's no difference, I've got friends that have done it, built businesses. It's the same. It's leadership qualities, it's team building, it's creating culture. So that combination of factors, I think, led me towards this job rather than anything, if you like, specifically within football.
How did you find Dumbarton then? Because I can imagine it's quite daunting leading a training session for the first time, but equally it's very different to being in a kind of professional environment.
Different in terms of the full-time side of it, and taught me a huge amount. First of all, I always acknowledge that you need the opportunity to begin with. You also need timing to work and fate to work with you. So I went in and worked with a brilliant group of players at Dumbarton, really good people and young men who were really engaging with what I did, and that helped me massively because you need that. But hugely challenging in that, I do some coach education work now at the SFA, and whenever I'm helping people through their licences, it's all still very, this is your number, this is your pitch. Whereas in Dumbarton, I was working on a Tuesday night on a quarter of a pitch in an indoor astroturf at Tory Glen, half a pitch on the second night of the week, waiting till the previous group cleared the area for you to go and set up. Maybe planning for 16 and then 3 players get stuck at work and you've got 13. And so I had to adapt very quickly. So what I work with now, resource-wise, area-wise, planning, time to set up, numbers, it's easy now compared to what it was like. I had to think very quickly and adapt and be smart and work on how to get the best from the resources I had. And then at that point I had to work on sessions that were engaging, enjoyable, because I had part-time players that were coming from work. Now as I evolved as a coach, the education side of it became much more important, and I had to teach myself to do that. But at that point I just had to find ways to get my players to engage with me. And I think we did that quite well, but as a learning experience, tough but absolutely brilliant in terms of the grounding it gave me in coaching.
How much do you think that that's helped you nowadays in terms of having to think outside of the box, have to problem solve, have to think quickly on your feet?
Hugely. So for the reasons obviously I've just outlined about numbers changing, size of area, setting up while your players are waiting on you to begin. And I just think it was a tough schooling in coaching, if you like, not in the respect that the players I worked with and the support I was given, just everything not being nice and easy. And on top of that, I was working. I was coming straight from work to, we trained 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock at Dumbarton. So I was leaving the house in the morning and going to work, coming straight from work to take training and getting home at whatever time. And that, I don't say that for people to say, oh wow, look at you, because loads of people work really hard. And there was a lot of it was a passion for me as well, but it taught me a work ethic. I think I already had it, but it taught me that in order to go and try and progress in football coaching, this was the starting point for it, and I had to then immerse myself in it. And I did all the things that people at that level of the game will do. I took bibs home to wash them and picked up kit and encouraged the players to be more professional, and added as much as I could into it. But that's replicated up and down the country at these levels of the game. I just get to tell my story a little bit more because of the job I'm in now, but there's loads of people that do it. But what I would say is that if you've got an ambition, unless you're fortunate enough to get an opportunity at the highest level, you're going to have to do it. But if you really love it and you're good at it, then that's just the start of the journey for you.
And I can imagine nowadays, knowing the roles that kind of you had to do to get into coaching, the support staff you have here at Hibernian now, you must appreciate their roles even more so, because you had to do that. It was albeit on a smaller scale, but equally, how important every little cog is to this team?
Yeah, I think to begin with, I think as a manager, appreciating the role of coaches within your setup and the importance of it. Maybe to illustrate it better, as people often ask me, what did you prefer, being a player or as a manager? Well, neither. Coach is the best one. Being a coach is the best one because you get all the good parts and you get that closeness of relationship with players, and it's just a brilliant role to have at a club. But I understand the importance of it. So you have to empower then your coaching staff. So I would like to think if you speak to John, if you speak to Craig, if you speak to Dave now, that they'll feel empowered. That they feel they can take responsibility, they can engage with players, they can lead with them because I make them feel comfortable enough to do it. And then on a broader scale, it's encouraging me to find out as much as I can about other people's job at the club. So the communication I have with Nathan and his team and Colin Clancy and you on the analysis side and Pedro on the kit side, it's about understanding their job and appreciating it, obviously, but understanding the importance of each of these jobs within the manager being viewed as being successful and the team going to win games.
Yeah, and even down to the academy as well, because that was your kind of next step in your coaching career, under 20 coach at Hearts. I think you went on record, didn't you, and said that was one of the biggest decisions that you had to make, whether you actually made that step into full-time coaching.
Yeah, I don't know if you were going to mention the club there when you were doing it, but yeah, it was the reason being was at that point I was working with PFA and I was doing more like with FIFPro, the Royal Players Union. I was Tony Higgins, who was president of the PFA in Scotland, Fraser Bishop chief executive, were really supportive of me, and Tony got me more involved with FIFPro. I travelled to the Netherlands quite a lot. I'd presented at conferences in Ljubljana and Budapest, and I was really enjoying it. And I had probably the opportunity to go and do an exec education programme, which is equivalent to like a postgrad in kind of football administration. And I believed that was a route that was a good future career for me. And then the opportunity to go and work again in a full-time environment came up. And I spoke to the aforementioned Tony Higgins, and so Tony had played with Hibs and had a good playing career. And I asked him, and he had a chance early in his time post-retirement about being a manager at a lower league club, and he was doing work with PFA. And I think he tells the story to me. I think it was Sir Alex Ferguson that said. I think it was Sir Alex Ferguson said to him, "You know, do you love football, or are you in love with football?" Now they sound the same thing, but Tony's a smart guy, and he said it to me, and I understood it. So I had to think that, and my answer was like, I'm in love with it. I don't just love it, I'm in love with it. It's been my life since I was 5, and that probably made me take that leap of faith, if you like to go that way. I often still think, what would have happened if I didn't? And it threw me into a completely different environment. And what it did was, going back to the point I made a few questions ago about how I coached, I had to then learn to educate while I coached. It wasn't just about tempo and enjoyment. I had to still retain that, but I had to educate. I was working with full-time players. I was working with players that wanted information, that wanted guidance, that wanted advice. And my responsibility was to give them that. So I backed myself as a coach at that point. I then realised that, wow, I still had a lot to learn, and hopefully over that period I did that as well.
And you've had a really good time here in terms of developing young players. Thinking back, is that kind of where that almost love has come from? The fact that you've kind of been in an academy setup, you've worked with young, inspiring footballers, you knew how to get the best from them, or is that too easy to make that link?
Yeah, I suppose it'd be easy for me to say, yeah, that's the case. I never really think about it too much. I just think that I enjoy young players. I think they give you an energy about your job, but they bring that natural enthusiasm that youth does. I think it's usually satisfying if you can, sometimes selfishly, if you can see your input bear fruit, if you like, with a young player and the progression that they go and make in their career. But I feel the same, I must admit, I feel the same responsibility to all my players. So I don't think I take a different approach to younger players. I just think I've always been more than willing to give them opportunities if they're good enough, if I believe they're good enough. And that's the key aspect of it is, I still have to have an opinion on whether I think they're good enough to make that step. But if they are, I don't really focus too much on their age. And as I said, I've enjoyed watching, the upward trajectory, if you like, of some of these players, and I still keep in touch with them. So I speak to Lewis Morgan in Miami, and I still text Josh Madja at Bordeaux, and these players that I feel as if I've helped in some way. There'll be loads of other people that have helped them, but if I've had an impact upon their career that's enabled them to go and achieve good things, both in terms of their career and financially, etc., they're doing great.
Just finally touching on kind of managerial career, because we've only just got into it, but obviously Alloa, St Mirren, Sunderland, and now here with us at Hibernian. Alloa, it could have been really easy for you to say, you know what, managers or management isn't for me. Obviously, relegation in your first year, you went into it in what was a very difficult job anyway. But just how has that shaped your kind of belief, your playing style, everything that you wanted to achieve as a manager by bouncing back from that disappointment and setting a club record of 10 games of winning streak, obviously?
I think that experience shaped a lot of probably my future career. A couple of reasons. One, I remember driving to do the press conference for the job and I phoned my wife and said, I don't think I can do this. I was probably in a place where I thought, I'm not sure if it was right for me, I don't know if I can do it, I don't know if it'll be good enough. I think people have those wobbles all the time in life, but I'd openly admit it. Decided to keep, probably she convinced me. I had a brilliant chairman at Alloa, Mike Mulroney, who I was, again, fate, sliding doors, moments. My first manager job to have a chairman as supportive as him, brilliant club, great people around it, and I was lucky that way. And then, so you mentioned the relegation, so we're in the Championship, we only had 4 or 5 points to do the job. But what I seen over that second half of the season from December onwards was we improved. Individual players improved, we improved as a team, we collected more points. We finished the season, I think, 6 unbeaten, including games against Hibs and against Rangers. And so at that point, more than the result, because we still got relegated, was just, I thought, I'm okay at this, I'm making them better. And you need something tangible at times as a manager to make you go, okay, I might be okay at this, and I'll keep going. And the second season was a brilliant experience because I got to build my own squad. Terrific group we put together, had a brilliant start to the season, and it gave me a platform for management that I'll be forever grateful for. But I would never be dismissive of the luck I got involved in terms of the people at that club that had faith in me, if you like, and supported me through, as you said, that initial relegation. Yeah,
and then from that point, your managerial career excelled, really, over 50% win record at every club you've been at. What I'm really interested to know is how those experiences have helped you create training methods, training plans. And I know you've gone on record and said that what you want to do is create a very structured and very organised environment. Where's that come from?
Own personality, to begin with. I think that you have to acknowledge that your own approach to coaching and management, you will learn and you will adapt and you'll evolve, but there's going to be aspects of it that are born out your own character. So I'm OCD with a lot of things. I like tidiness, I like organisation, I like structure, just the way I am, and I've carried that into the professional aspect of my career. And then that continual probably evolutionary in how you coach, how you manage, how you deliver a structure within your organisation. And St Mirren was probably the time where I learned to build that most, because Alloa again was part-time. But you speak about managing records, and I lost my first 6 league games at St Mirren. So again, it's people will never see you think your career goes like that, but in the truth it goes down and dips and goes up, and it's seen your way through those periods that help. But all those experiences led me to, from a playing side, from a tactical side, the 4 kind of main cornerstones that we worked at. You may go into that later and work within that. And then the behavioural aspects of it, learning communication and organisation, irrespective of the size of the club and the calibre of the player you're managing and the experience of the player, it matters so much. People think, you go and manage Champions League players at Sunderland, Premiership players. If you communicate to them and you're organised, you've got a good buy-in to start with. It doesn't change from Dumbarton players to Sunderland players to Hibs players, international players here. communicate, you're organised, and it's a brilliant starting block to work from.
How does that then affect your plans for training here at HTC? Because obviously this season was completely different in terms of the European football. Your first taste of it as well, something new, something you have to adapt to. How did you take that into your stride whilst keeping organisationally strong?
Yeah, so I think the fundamental principles you have, so how far in advance we let the players know the monthly schedules, the weekly schedule, the daily work we're doing goes up on the television, etc. All these things that we continually do. And then I think about what the week might look myself for European football. So specifically, how do we adapt from Thursday to Sunday and or travelling, etc. And been involved in the logistics of that, when we travelled, how often when we stayed, when we travelled back. And then I think you have to be open-minded enough to take opinion from those that have done it. So I sought opinion from people in the game who've experienced it, who've worked, not necessarily as managers, but have been involved in the coaching team of teams that have played Thursday, Sunday, and asked their opinion, not to tell me what to do, but to give me more information and knowledge about what I would decide. So I think as a manager, I've got to decide, because I live and die by all my decisions in terms of the success of the job. So I think I just tried to build up as much information as I could, while also having enough confidence in myself to say, right, I think that's the way we should do it. And I would say with European football, I loved it. Like, I loved the whole experience of it. I was so disappointed by losing the game we did, because I genuinely believed we would win it, and felt even on the night we'd win it. But the actual experience of being involved in European football and everything that went with it, loved it, and just made me want to have it again for the club, because it's different. It felt different. Everything around it was enjoyable, challenging but enjoyable.
Talking about those kind of people that you asked, who have been your key influences then, in terms of who you've learnt from, who you've read about? We're sat obviously in your office. There's loads of books under the TV. How much learning do you take from other people?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in other people, not just in football. I'm fascinated with people that have I'd love to say success, but just have had interesting careers or lives and journeys and have stories to tell. And case in point is our owner. So when I speak to Ron, he wants to ask me loads about football, and I want to ask him loads about his life, because it's quite interesting and different. But yeah, I'm fascinated by it, and I think that you can various ways of doing that. It can be people you come across, it can be people you come across professionally, it's those you read about in your own world, if you like, sport or football. And then I spoke about my dad and the influence that he had in me. I've got a couple of good friends that have got their own businesses that I'm interested in how they built their businesses, etc. And then football wise, I've spoken about this previously. When I was manager at Alloa, we drew Celtic in the Cup, and Brendan Rodgers was in charge at the time, and came and gave me an open invite to go to Lennoxtown, and we then played them with St Mirren soon afterwards, and I took him up on it and went to visit him a couple of times, and he was good enough to not only allow me to watch training but spent quite a bit of time with me after, and I think he's brilliant at what he does. There was a lot of things that I took affirmation from, if you like, because probably thought about things in a similar way in terms of how to build teams, and listen, he's been much more successful than me, but in terms of how we've seen how to manage behaviours and how to get the best from people, etc. So that was a big influence for me. People like Derek McInnes, who, when I was a young manager at Alloa and St Mirren, made a lot of time for me, spoke to me a lot, did the same when I got sacked at Sunderland. He had the same experience at Bristol City from St Johnstone. People that have walked in your shoes help. And then in more general terms, I'll envy the coaches involved in this. I'll watch. I go and watch. I think I've told this story to another interview at one point. Was when the first lockdown was in place and we started to emerge from it. My eldest daughter was actually able to start grassroots training before I had returned to pre-season here. But at that time it was still socially distanced training. That was a new thing for everybody. It was 2 metre distance how to train. And I went to watch her train, and the coach was delivering a passing drill, and he was doing it socially distanced. And I watched it, and when I came in here and started doing pre-season, I used it, adapted it a little bit, you know, because my daughter, she was 11 at the time, so 11-year-old girl, and then professionals here. But I watched it and I thought, it's good, it works, and I do the same now. I'll throw YouTube and spend a bit of time, and I'll pinch things, and I laugh at the players now because I've got a big bank of sessions that we use, and sometimes we'll do something we've not done before, and the players will give you feedback, and if you like it, and I can't remember now if I've stole it from somebody else or whether I've made it up myself. So, and there are some I have made up myself, but I think Guardiola describes himself as an ideas thief, and I think it's not a bad way to be. You know, I think it just proves that you've kind of got this, you're open-minded enough to look at what other people are doing and acknowledge that there's a lot of smart people out there. So, pretty broad-minded in that respect, and curious about sports coaching in general.
And I'm right in saying in the books on your shelf, they're all the pages are all turned, aren't they, for the elements that you want to use?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a skim reader, so I've always been like that. You know, back to my school days, I've always liked language, and I've always found language quite easy to take in. So I skim read. It's not necessarily a brilliant way to read. I wouldn't recommend it, but I skim read and I take out little bits. And so during lockdown, I read Eddie Jones' book, who I think is brilliant, and his podcasts are great and quite interesting in him. And just do that. I would just fold down pages that had either a quote in it or a paragraph in it that I thought was relevant to either my own job or what I was going through or what I might go through in the future, and then periodically I'll go back through it. And it's amazing how, and again, it's a bit like the point I was making about sessions. You forget over a period of time that it was somebody else probably that said it, because you think, well, maybe I came up with that. But it's just improving your hopefully your skill set.
Yeah. Talk us how you map out a session then, from your perspective. Is it through pots? Is it a kind of combined effort through everyone? How does that work, and what are the key things that you want to kind of get out of a week building up to a game?
Yeah, so in terms of the design of the session, I still take probably 90-95% responsibility for that, and it's not out of not trusting my staff to do it. It's because I love it so much. My favourite part of the job, and you know, I work to 4 main pillars, if you like. They're really broad: how we switch, how we counter, how we press, how we defend, and we theme training sessions on that basis, coupled with sometimes a general session, sometimes a conditioning session, etc. So sometimes your whole week will be tactical, depending on the opposition, depending on the game. Sometimes there's elements of how you want to play. So if you play against a team that we think we're going to do a little counter-attacking in, then the early part of the week we'll do counter-attack themed sessions. And then as we get towards the second half of the week, it becomes more specific to the system and bits within the system, still with the counter theme. So the theme of the session is the starting point. The physical output you want from the session, and that's born out again about experience and knowledge that comes from delivering over a period of years and working with your sports science team and your performance team to know what you will get from that type of session. And I think I've got a good feel for that now, but I can confirm it with Colin if I want to. You know, if I'm unsure, I'll say what I expect from this, and I'll reaffirm that post-training. What did we get physically, not just total distance, but obviously high intensity sprints, XLs, decels, all the things that are important to us and what we want from that day. And then how we build the actual session. I said I've got a bank of 500 or 600 now that I can pick from. Sometimes I'll make up new ones that I'll drop in. Build the session from that. Always sent out to staff the day before so they know the breakdown. Discuss it with the staff in the morning. Always go out with my staff to set up. And when I deliver on pitch, I never take any notes out. So there's a large element that this was all rehearsal for me. So there's a lot of mental rehearsal involved in how I coach. So the vision of how I see the pitches out there. So those pictures are in my head before I go and set up. So the flow of the session, what area moves to the next area, how that is there, and then what I'm delivering is there. And it's my own approach. You know, there's people who need notes, people want notes. It's just my way of working. But the visualising, I'm quite a visual person. You probably see from in here, there's a lot of whiteboards, and I like to see things. So see them in my own head, put them out and deliver them on pitch. So that's going from the theme of the session to the planning of it, to the tactical element, to then how we actually, the flow is important for me out in the grass, really important. How it moves, where players move to, how it just feels non-disrupted at any point. It just goes and they can see the session building up from there as well.
You mentioned those 4 cornerstones. Are they your 4 key principles in terms of style of play? Have you ever had a specific style of play that you've taken from one club to the next and tried to implement, or is it looking at the players and the players that you have in the building and seeing, right, this is how I will create a style around these 4 principles? Or do you take one specific idea and try and implement it everywhere?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and you'll get lots of different answers from people that do my job, and you'll get lots of different opinion on people that love football and what the right answer is, what the answer should be to that question. And I think like probably a lot of young managers and coaches when I first started doing it, I think I probably wanted to have a system and a style. That's me. That's what people associate with me. And so when I went from Alloa to Simon, I played in a certain way, in a certain style, and I tried to replicate it at Simon. And I mentioned about losing the first league games. I didn't have the players that could play in the same way, so I had to figure it out quite quickly and find another way to get through. I was able to recruit more players that suited that better. But it was a good learning experience for me, because what it reminded me of is, again, it's about how principled are you and how flexible are you. And again, you can be at either end of the extreme, or you can be somewhere in the middle. You can be more towards principled or more flexible. And I'm really principled in my structure and those 4 core principles. But what I think those 4 core principles allow me to do is have a great deal of flexibility within the choices system. And you mentioned an important point there about, I think if you're able to recruit a squad with 2 players in every position minimum who all have exactly the same attributes in each position, I think you can say, there's my style, there's my system, go. But if you've got one right winger that's lightning quick, but your other right winger's more of a drop in the pockets and receives the ball, if your lightning quick one's injured, how you play the game differs. If you've got strikers that are running behind, then I think you'll work on drawing the opposition off and onto and playing behind. If you've got strikers that are good in the air, you'll work on getting the ball away areas and crossing it. So for me, there's probably a happy medium. I've got they've got these 4 pillars we worked in. I've got, we work on a quite an old-fashioned way, making the pitch as big as we can in possession and as small as we can out of possession. And that's I think a brilliant core principle to have. And you can deliver that within training sessions. You can take it on the pitch, but it can encompass loads of different systems. So again, that I've came away from believing that I had to be absolutely principled in my approach. Not to say I'm right, but that's led me to 275 games later that's still doing the job.
How much did that system at Alloa, how much has that changed now here at Hibernian?
Well, I think what I did here, that I had tried a little bit at Sunderland at the beginning of my second season without really nailing it, was I wanted that I kind of, when I came here, prior to coming here, I was really interested in being able to go between a back 3 and a back 4, either in game or to start games, and I just thought it gave real flexibility, and it opens up so many different options further up the pitch. And over a period of time here, I've had personnel that either were able to do it or we've recruited to be able to do it, and we've worked quite hard at it, and I think we've hopefully had relative success in that regard, that the players are comfortable in doing it in game or whether we start game. And that was something that at that point I hadn't thought about, didn't really know how to coach it, didn't understand the complexities of each system and the changes within it and the changes of roles further up the pitch. So I think hopefully that's improved. I think my knowledge of the game's improved through experience, through reading, through watching more people, through listening to more what other people say and more observations. But that's a significant one, I think, in terms of a change in approach.
How important is that then to you, that style of play isn't only in the first team, it drips through the club to be a Hibernian style of play. So, for example, the likes of Josh Doig, who have progressed in, but thinking more closely, like Jack Bryden, for example, who's been part of the matchday squad at times this year, that our development squad players know when they make the step up, this is how we play, this is how we'll do it.
Again, it's a good question, and there's a lot of different opinions. For me, I spent a bit of time in Valencia a few years ago watching them train and spent a few days there, and it was interesting. Their head of academy said to me that their mantra, I feel like, was to produce players to play professionally in Spain. It wasn't to produce players to play for Valencia. I thought it was quite interesting, and I asked him why, and he said, well, we've had, at that point, there was something like 5 head coaches in 6 years or something, and one played the back three, one played the back four, one played one striker, one played 2 strikers. So I understood it, and I kind of get it, and I probably now got that opinion on it, but I think U18s below, I think it's about just trying to improve them as players individually, make them technically better, be able to deal with the challenges of just playing football. But then once they get to under 18s and then development squad, I think that's when your influence from a first team point of view needs to be there. So, take a really probably clear example of it. If at first team level you press to show outside all the time, then what you don't want is your development squad pressing to show inside. So, irrespective of the system, you need to have that core principle. So, because what you don't want then is a development player coming up and working with your first team level who presses the other way in which you teach your first team level. So that's just a one out of possession that needs to be clear, if you like. And there was loads of others in and out of possession that would come in there. But I think that under 18s above, I think you need to start to get players to be aware of what you would want at first team level. Below that, I think that's for the academy director and people within the club, and because otherwise I think it's dangerous. I think you start to then I think the influence at that point should be less.
And in terms of gearing up, ready for match day, obviously we've seen this year and last year as well, the change between the 3 and the 4. What do you think about when you're picking a team? I mean, team selection is incredibly contentious among football fans, and it always will be. When you're preparing for a game against the top side in the Cinch Premiership, or a side that's struggling at the bottom of the Cinch Premiership, what do you think about? Is it tactics, style, what you're going to face, personnel? What are the main elements, or is it kind of a combination of both, or all of them?
It's probably quite an easy way to explain this. So for me, split it down the middle, prepare for threat and exploit weakness. So they're my 2 starting points, if you like. Now, the prepare for threat column, if you like, can have one thing in it. See, you think the opposition might only hurt you one way, and the exploit weakness might have 5 in it, because you think there's and that's it. And it can vary, and that can depend on the calibre of the opposition and the individual threats and how they play, etc. It can change, but that's the starting point. So how do we prepare for threat? Now, again, not everybody acknowledges that. Some think, well, we're really good at what we do, but we acknowledge, right, okay, what we might have to do at possession, or what might we prepare for, but then exploit weakness, and then how can we create, how can we score? And I think we've been good at that. Then that fits alongside your system and how you've been playing, and your personnel, how they've been playing well. So that doesn't dictate your choices. Mm-hmm. It influences your preparation for the game tactically and the specifics of it. So the specifics don't need to be a change in system. They can be the instruction within the system and the patterns you work on. And again, how you defend, because you might defend more long balls, you might defend more cross balls, etc. So that helps me then clarify what I want from the game. And in terms of individual player selections, I mean, that's the part of the job that is a bit that I was going to say it's the hardest. I don't mind it, because it's just part of the job. It's okay. It's problem solving decision maker. That's what I am. who makes decisions that cause me problems. So every week I've got to solve the problem of picking a team. To do that, I've got to make decisions. Every time I make a decision, I've got players that are unhappy. That causes me a problem. They come and I speak to them, and then it all goes round again. And of course, every decision I make in team selection is analysed with the benefit of hindsight, which is okay. But I'd love to do that. No, with hindsight, I could have played that team, or I could have made that subs, and that just goes with the territory of the job. But those are the kind of that starting point for me, coupled with what you do on a weekly and consistent basis, gets you to the point where you pick a team that you believe that's the right one. And that's one of the key points. You've got to trust your decision making. That's the bit that separates you from the coach or other people at the club. Is you are the one that has to make those key decisions. But if you don't want the responsibility to do it, then don't do the job. It's one I'm comfortable with.
Is that something that has developed over time as well? Because I can imagine, again, going kind of back to Alloa, when you're kind of first making those decisions, I can imagine you kind of second guessing yourself sometimes. Whereas after years of experience, over 5 years of experience now, you're thinking, no, I did make the right decision, or I have made the right decision.
Yeah, but I'll still get some wrong, and I'll continue to do that.
It's human nature.
Yeah, I reflect every single day on what I do, whether it's training or a match day, and you reflect on your choices. I don't know if it becomes easier. I think that I've always been okay with it. I'm I think a lot anyway, so the process of getting there is an easy one for me, because I'll not only think about the permutations, but I also think about the player. That I mentioned my dad earlier, the one thing he says my biggest fault is I've got a conscience as a football manager, and he said that's a problem because I care about my players. So when I leave a player out and he's on the bench, or he's not stripped, or he's dropped, or whatever, I genuinely bother about how they feel. Now, I know I've got to make the decision, but that's still not a brilliant feeling to have. But then beyond that, I'm comfortable with decision making because I invite so much communication with my players. So one, I'll explain a lot to them, but two, and I would like to think that we'll back this up, is they can walk through the door of this office at any point and be critical of my choice. I don't mind it. I might not agree with that. There's two different things. I don't get precious about it. A player can come in and say, well, I don't agree that you left me out, I don't agree you took me off, I don't agree with this. It's okay. It's okay to say that, and I'll then give my reasons. And ultimately, we might never get to a point where we agree, but I think once you've had that conversation, my experience, a player always walks out the door, might still not like you, but I think he respects the fact that you've allowed him to speak and give his opinion, because that's something that traditionally over time in football wasn't great. I think you felt as if you had to keep this opinion yourself, and so that again probably helps the decision making. But you're okay with it, you make your decisions, and you know that I'm more than happy to explain them individually to players if they're comfortable with that.
That's actually really interesting, because one of the things I think that's changed a lot nowadays is the actual emotional intelligence that a manager needs in terms of making sure the players are okay. Having a conscience is probably a good thing now that, to be fair, managers, 20, 30 years ago may not have had so much of.
Yeah, so the first point is right. I think that there's a much more awareness and much more discussion around EQ. Became a new thing, and then all of a sudden people became aware of it. The one thing I would say is that people point often towards managers years gone by. I'm not sure I necessarily agree they didn't have it. I think tough success, they probably did. It just generationally we were different. People probably behaved differently, and so there was bits we compare and we go, wow, that wouldn't happen now. Maybe not, but at that time it was right, and it was still the way of getting the best from people. And on that, there's a lot now spoken about soft skills. So again, go back to the coach education side of it. Quite often in the course, be delivered to the students, you need to develop your soft skills. And it's quite interesting because I think you can improve your soft skills. I think you can have an awareness about what are they, how do I make them better, whether that's communicate, whether that's empathy, whatever it is. But in truth, there's a bit of, I think, it's either who you are, again, going back to your own characteristics. Particularly particularly in football. So like every manager that goes into it will say, yeah, I'm going to have these soft skills, I'm going to do this with players, I'm going to do that. See, when you beat 5-0, or you've lost 5 games in a row, you're still going to do it. Because that's the acid test. And that's the thing that's key. So if you're going to have these soft skills, you're going to have this communication, and you're going to have this consistency of behaviour, can you do it when it's tough? Because it does get tough in management. And that's what you don't know until you're in it. And that's the thing I would say is important. I certainly do a lot of what I'm based on is my consistency, communication, my consistency, behaviour. I use a kind of mantra that every day I walk in here, I can't have a day off and I don't have an off day. So I can't decide to come in here and just stay in this office and let other people do the work. No, it's my job, my responsibility to do it. And if I'm tired or I'm in a bad mood, I can't let people see that. That's not about being soft, that's about being the person that creates the culture within the building, and being aware enough that you're the person that does that.
How did you develop that culture?
Part of it, I think, was in me to begin with. Doing okay in management helps because it gives you courage and your convictions. I also started to work when I was at St Mirren. I worked with a gentleman called Gavin White, who his day job, if you like, is involved in behavioural corporate work and helping businesses and senior management of companies, etc., be successful. But what he did with the work he did with me, and I still flippantly refer to him as a guru, but he just helped me understand my own thought process and decision making, and he, big influence in me in that regard, just helped me so much develop that consistency of behaviour and be comfortable with it, and acknowledge the importance of it, and hopefully some of the things he's taught me I then pass down to my players, hopefully, that helps them get them through tough periods or low confidence or poor game or whatever it may be. So he probably helped me a lot in that regard. And then a bit about my own probably ideal football club, what it looked like, standards and tidiness and habits and culture and demands and all these things that people throw out there, but you've got to live it every single day.
When you come to a new club, like obviously you've done, and you haven't always had the easy situation. Obviously St Mirren, you had to try and keep them in the league. Sunderland, again, a really difficult situation. And then coming here, how do you change a culture of a football club? How easy is it to change a culture of a football club to what you want it to be?
Yeah, you're right, first of all, to point out, when I reflect back on management, you took Alloa job in the bottom league, St Mirren job in the bottom league, Sunderland had just been relegated twice. I think we were a point off the bottom. So I've never been given a job where everything's going great. But that's kind of the norm in most cases. And I'm probably going to repeat myself, because if there was a blueprint for doing it, I would offer it up. But the reality is I found myself in different situations at different times, at different clubs with different resources, and I've had to figure out the best way to do it. So to quantify it a bit, St Mirren made a lot of changes in the first transfer window. It wasn't long after I took over the job, and we did something that I've replicated at the club since, and we do it now at Hibs, where we set 6 game targets, but we do it as players and staff, all the staff, and we set a 6 game target, points, goals scored, goals against, clean sheets, etc. And that little blocks help us set real clear targets. So that at that point in St Mirren, we shifted the culture of when we were bottom of the league, we were facing relegation in the face to clear goals all the time. And then when I went to Sunderland, in my head prior to the players coming back, I thought, right, okay, I'll do the same type of thing. We'll come in, we'll meet, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to be successful. We only had 13 senior players first day of pre-season. The club was going through this big transition with loads of players didn't turn up, etc. So I thought, how can I do that? Because my squad at the start of the season is going to be markedly different to the squad now. So at that point I said, right, I'm just going to deliver on pitch. I'm going to earn hopefully the respect and the trust of players with how we deliver training sessions, how we structure training sessions. I think we did that. We got some high profile players, I think, to come along with us in that regard. And then when I came here, the priority for me when I first came here was I had to get points. So it's all very well and good in coming in and say, I wanted to come in and say, this is my way of working, and this is the culture I want to create. Follow me, I'm great, do this. Well, point off the bottom league in the Scottish Premiership is not brilliant for Hibs. And that season got curtailed. It was a big club went out of the league. So we had to get away from that, and we did it. I didn't necessarily say I didn't enjoy it, that's not the right phrase. It was a sticking plaster. I was just saying I need to just get points, get us out of this, and then we'll go from there. So when COVID came, in a strange way, it was really good for me because it was an extended period away from the club. When I came back, that initial pre-season leading up to the closed door season, I felt in a really good place, and I felt as if, right, this is a time where I can, with an 8-week pre-season, this is where we can really set clear parameters in terms of what we want to do, what we want to achieve, and that's where we had the meeting that the players will speak about, and we said we want to finish third, and we want to win a cup. And those were drivers for us the whole season, and we didn't get them because we didn't win the cup, which hurt me a lot, and still hurts me a lot, but drives me on to do it. But we, so the timing can influence how you behave when you first get a job.
But equally, that year was the club's best league finish in 16 years. When you have a high like that, even though you've got the disappointment of the cup final that still hurts you, when you come into a new season, what then do you have to do to motivate the players to go again, to achieve a similar goal or to compete in a high level?
Well, it's a brilliant question because it's one that I asked myself during the summer. Because going back to how we got to the point of wanting to finish third and win a cup. Now, in Scotland, it's you say, well, why don't you want to win the league? Now that's so a long-term ambition of us. Of course it is. But at the meeting with the players, and I said, right, if I'm sitting here with you and saying, win the league, are you going to buy it yet? I'm sure there's that collective buy-in. So what we asked them, what does a team look like that wins the league? And they came up with all these different qualities that are now in the corridors outside the changing room. And we said, okay, if you get them, what do you think you can do? So we can have that successful season, we can finish third, we can qualify for Europe, we can win a cup. So this season, I thought, well, when I speak to the players, when we come in early, what am I going to say to them? That I don't want to say, just do the same again, lads, that was good. So I spoke to them about it, and I said, remember last season, a lot of them are still here with me. Yeah, agreed, we had the buy-in, it's all now in the corridors. And I said, I thought long and hard about how we do it, and we just put up 2 words, and it'd just be better. So staff are in as well, so if each and every one of us, me included, can be better than we were last season, 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%, something like this, then we give ourselves a right good chance at bare minimum replicating last season and hopefully be better. And that's been the mantra for it. It's quite it sounds very simplistic, but it's actually allowed me to have a consistency of message to the players. So we constantly talk about being better. Can I be better? Can we make the training ground better? Like we're doing some work around it just now. Can we make our training kit better? Can we make everything that we've got? Can we be better? And as long as you're striving towards doing that, then again, it's a really good starting point to have.
In terms of squad modelling and attitudes that you want here in your players, how, when you're recruiting players, when you've got a player that doesn't quite fit into that, how do you change a player's attitude to fit into your culture, and what are the big things that you look for in terms of a player that you want to bring into Hibernian?
Well, first of all, good people make good players, in my experience. They've got to have ability, of course they have, talent and desire and physical fitness, all these very obvious things. But I think they've got to be able to, they've got to be driven, but they've got to be part of a team, so they've got to be able to bring people along with them and work with people, work alongside them, and engage with what people are asking them to do and demanding of them. So what we do is and that people might mistake that for saying you want to send nice players. No, it's not. You can be a good person, but you have an edge. Not everybody will like me, I know that, but I think I'm a pretty decent person. But I won't be everybody's cup of tea. But I think to do the job I've done, I've got to have an edge. I've got to have an edge that at times I will fall out with people, that I will. I've just got to. And you need that in players, but they can still be good people. So when we recruit, the football side is the beginning, the starting point. But then we do a lot of work in terms of finding out about the character of the player. We take a lot of guidance and reference from people that have worked with them and worked alongside them. And we find out as much as we can. And quite, not always, it's not always you get to speak to a player before you sign them. If you do, I put quite a lot into the first conversations I have with a player. Again, I'm trying to give practical examples to this rather than just the theory almost behind it. So Jake Doyle-Hayes, so when I spoke to Jake in the summer when he was a free agent, obviously looked at his ability and he proved himself in Scotland at St Mirren and his pedigree at Villa. But I spoke to him and there was a couple of questions I wanted to ask him about where he saw his career and how he'd been playing and where he seen himself at Hibs, etc. And I really liked him for the first, not just as a person, yeah, how he engaged with me, but professionally the things he said and where he was at. And it wasn't me prompting him, he was offering them up. So I put quite a lot of stock in that. Chris Miller will be another one. So when I first, I had to pitch to Chris to come here because he had other options, but I also liked him. And I don't mean that just that I want to be his pal. He's never going to be my pal, he's going to be my player. Yeah. But I liked him. I thought he's got something about him that will make him right here. And that's important. I think the feel I get for a player, and I always say to them when I have those conversations, you've got to get a feel for me. Because nothing wrong as you come away from this conversation and think, I'm not going to enjoy working for him. Because if you get that feel, don't do it, because it's never going to be successful.
Is that just a case of you kind of trusting your instinct on that?
Yeah, and that instinct is born out of, again, speaking about the greatest manager ever, Sir Alex Ferguson, I think in one of his books, he talks about his gut. And he just thought it was a gut, but then I think when he wrote the book on People from Harvard, they said, no, that's actually born out of your knowledge and experience, and so you just think it's your gut, but it is, but it's also everything you've learned along the way. So I think for me now, nowhere near at his level, but you have a gut instinct that is born out of your experiences as a manager and as a coach that leads you towards thinking that player will work with me and hopefully be successful. And I think over recent times we've had a pretty decent success rate in that regard, by thinking that we're not only getting good players but people that will fit with the culture around this place. I mean, I think if anybody was to come in, I kind of pride myself on, if you come into our changing room, how the players are, and I also watch our players. I'm a big observer and I watch them eat lunch together and eat meals together, and I could never predict who would be sitting beside each other, which I think is remarkable. So I could walk in that room at any point and if you said to me who will be sat next to each other, I would get it wrong probably every time, because they mix so well. Older, younger ones, more experienced, higher level playing careers, whatever it is, wherever, different positions. They're just a really good group.
I'm very conscious that we're keeping you for a long time, but in terms of the management jigsaw, there's so many elements of being a manager in terms of, or more than just the actual match day or just training or just team selection. How long do you think it took to understand the management jigsaw? Or do you think that's something that no one will ever fully understand because of the way it evolves and different sections always come in?
I think there's little pieces that can fall out and you have to find the bits that fit again. I think depends on your approach to building the jigsaw. If you're a person that starts at the corners and does the outside, then that's probably what it's like. So you can get the aspects are never going to go away. So managing players is never going to go away.
Yeah.
Doing press conferences is never going to go away. The boardroom is never going to go away. Managing up. So there's those ones. Then the bits in the middle, like for example, emergence of social media and its influence on players and how they interact with it and the problems that can cause you. Relatively new. I don't know what 5 years' time will be like. That's probably in the middle somewhere. So those little bits will change. I think the bits around the outside stay. I think you become aware of them, and through a period of time you become better at keeping them in place because you get used to it and you become comfortable, and being comfortable in your own skin is a big thing in any walk of life, and that's something I've probably got to, or I've been for a while now in management. I'm quite comfortable in my own skin with the job. I'll make mistakes, I'll get things wrong. People will have an opinion on whether I'm good or bad, but I'm comfortable with how I do the job. I know how hard I work at it. I know how much it means to me. I know how driven I am to be successful. I know how much I want to make this club successful. And having the outside pieces of the jigsaw in place, I think, enable you to do that.
What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I think if I'm speaking specifically to this job, because obviously this conversation's about, I back to Gavin White that I mentioned earlier on. He said to me that I was chatting to him one day about, it was another manager, I think, high profile manager, and maybe his change in success or how he was perceived. And he told me that great leaders serve their people, and it's I'd really thought about it before, hadn't heard it before. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, look, all great politicians, kings, queens, war generals, football managers, sports coaches, head teachers, chief, whatever it is. He said, the best ones understand that they're to serve their people. He said, people make the mistake of believing that they become a leader, the people that serve them. And I thought it was quite clever, because I understood it. And it's brilliant, because I think I did it anyway. But what it did was it made me really clearly think about that. So my job now is, I'm here to serve my players and staff. Not here to serve me, not here to make me look good. I'm here to make them better. And that's my job every single day, is to come into work. Can I make Ryan Porteous better? Can I make Kevin Nisbet better? Can I make Paul McGinn better? Can I make my kit man feel like he's the best here, or is he the best? Can I get him better kit? Can I get him new washing machines? Whatever it is. And it was specific to this job. I've had loads of advice over the years from different people that influence you at different times, but in terms of specific to being a manager, I thought it was a brilliant, whether it was advice or whether it was just educating me. It's something that stuck with me, and I think it's if I was passing on to somebody, or somebody was to ask me what piece of advice, I think to be a leader in any respect, I think that's a really key part of a piece of advice.
That was really fascinating also, Jack. Thank you very much for sitting down with us for the first instalment of Inside Training.
Thank you.
So there we go. That concludes the first episode of the Inside Training podcast. We hope we gave you an insight into Hibernian Football Club, Jack Ross, how he works, but also some management and personal thoughts to take away with you that you might be able to implement into your own life. Thank you for listening, and we'll bring you a next one in a month's time.